The quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is a way to solve for x. So first we want to start in standard form so we can identify the variables we can pull for this quadratic formula. And right here we're looking at the standard formula. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So these variables a, b, and c represent the numbers that are out in front of the x squared, the bx, and then the simple number by itself. So not all equations are going to look this pretty, but I'm going to go through a few standard examples that will help you understand how we pull these a, b, and c down into this quadratic formula. So if you're interested, this is the actual math for how the standard form is converted to solving for x in the quadratic formula. So here we have the standard form again. Remember, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Using algebra, we complete the square and factor to get x alone, so we can solve for x with the quadratic formula. So let's look at an example. 3x squared plus x minus 1 equals 0. Looks very close to the standard form. Remember, the standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c. So we need to find what those letters are to plug into the quadratic formula. So looking at this layout, 3x squared, there we go, we have the variable x squared from our standard form. So the a would be 3, a equals 3, plus bx, so it's going to be a positive number x. So there's no number here, so what does that represent? 1. 1 times x equals x, so b equals x, then the last one plus c. Looks like a negative, -1, so c equals -1. Now, let's just plug and chug. Here's the quadratic formula you use. So substitute those values out. Negative b, what was our b? 1. So there we are, -1. Plus or minus b squared. So that's going to be 1 squared. Minus 4 times a. What's our a? 3. So there's our 3. Drop that down. Times c, which was -1. Times -1. Divided by 2 times a. 2 times 3. There's our 2 times 3. So let's do some simple math here. -4 times 3 times -1. We're looking at positive 12. 1 squared is 1. 1 plus 12. -1 stays the same. 2 times 3. Let's simplify that out. That will be 6. So we're looking at 1 plus 12, 13. So -1 plus or minus square root of 13 divided by 6. So the final answer is going to be two things, right, because of this plus or minus. So first, order of operations, remember, -1 plus square root of 13. Find that answer divided by 6. Here we go, our lower variable. Next, -1 minus square root of 13. Take that number divided by 6. And we get our second value for x using the quadratic formula. Okay, so for this example, it doesn't look like it's in standard form, right? But we can get there with a little bit of math. Remember, the standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So let's multiply this out. X times x, x squared, x times -2, -2x, and then let's subtract that 9 to get it in the c position, -9 equals 0. So we've simplified into the standard form. Now let's identify variables. There's nothing in front of the x squared, so that equals 1. 1 times x squared is x squared. A equals 1. B equals -2. And in the standard form, it's plus bx, so we pull that negative with it, -2. C equals, C is the number that's alone, -9. So -9. Now let's use that quadratic formula to plug and chug. B equals -2, so negative b, two negatives make a positive, right? Plus or minus square root. What's our b? Is -2. -2 squared minus 4 times a. A is 1, pull that down, times c. C is -9, pull that down, divided by 2 times a. 2 times what? A is 1. Now let's simplify a little bit further. What's -9 times 1 times -4? We're looking at 36 there, right? So positive 36. Then you got -2 squared, that's 4. So 4 plus 36, we're looking at 40, right? 2 times 1, that's simply 2. And then the 2 drops down as well. So now, the square root of 40 isn't our final answer. We want to factor that out. So by factoring, that simply means you can keep that radical sign there. Let's just find common multiples to see if we can factor one of them out for further simplifying. So when we look at this, 4 times 10 is still 40, right? So it stays under the radical. What is the square root of 4 though? 2. So that we can pull out in front. So 2 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 10. If you'd like to do the math right now, go ahead. Take the square root of 40, see what the answer is. Take the square root of 10 and multiply it times 2. It's going to be the exact same thing because we factored it out, made it simplified. So let's simplify it one step further. There's common multiples that we can divide out here. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1. We don't need to acknowledge the 1 in front. Obviously, it's the same thing, 1 times the square root of 10. And then obviously 2 divided by 2 is going to be 1. So 1 plus or minus the square root of 10. Now we can find what the actual x variable equals by taking 1 plus the square root of 10 for 4.16, and then 1 minus the square root of 10 for this negative 2.16. So we have the two values of x. So here's another example that is actually missing one of the standard form layouts. Let's see how we handle that. So 3k squared minus 48 equals 0. Almost in the standard form, right? AK squared plus BK plus C equals 0. So we're missing that BK. Basically, that means we multiplied that single variable times 0 to get rid of it. So we can assume, and we know, that the B variable equals 0. So 0 times k equals 0, right? So there we go. B is 0. Then the other ones are simple. We can just pull them down, right? What's the number in front of the variable squared? Is 3. So A equals 3. C equals that negative 48, right? Then, like I said, plug and chug. That's all the quadratic formula is about. Negative B, negative 0 plus or minus B squared, 0 squared, minus 4 times A, 3, times C, which is negative 48, divided by 2 times A, right? 2 times 3. So let's simplify that out under the radical. So negative 48 times 3 times negative 4. So what that equals under the radical sign is 576. So we're looking at negative 0 plus or minus the square root of 576. Now 576 seems like a real big number to factor down, right? But ending in an even number, I know that 2 will go into it. But my first try always is just simply taking the square root. And for this one, we're in luck. The square root of 576 is 24. So we rewrite 576 as 24 squared, which is simply 24 alone, right? So negative 0 plus or minus 24 divided by 6. So let's simplify even further. We're looking at negative 0. So that's really doesn't matter, right? So we keep the plus or minus 24 divided by 6. What are we looking at? Plus or minus 4. So the final variable value is actually what that equals. Positive 4, comma, negative 4.